Well, hello and welcome. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Jeff Otis. And Jeff and I have been friends for a few years now. We met online and have been collaborating on a few things. And one of the main topics we talk about a lot, and both of us have a good bit of background in, is leadership. And today we're going to take that topic of leadership and kind of beat it up a little bit around the concept of enrolling your team or your group or your department, whatever small or large group of people that you need to enroll around a particular vision or a goal. And so, Jeff, I'm looking forward to this one. We talked a little bit about a couple of steps before this. Maybe you can do a little summary about where we are from the last two videos we've done, and then we can jump into this concept of enrolling people.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I think what we're talking about today is incredibly important. Very few people achieve their dreams alone. It usually takes a support network or a team around you or expertise to assist you in doing that. But in the first episode, we talked about the importance of just developing that vision, that vision of success. And the takeaway was to really write down 10 to 20 bullet points that represented that definition of success, in different areas. And then the second video, we talked about fears, right? Like we all have fears to manage. And for each of those bullet points, we were going through the process of identifying what fear do you need to manage to turn that into reality. And these are important concepts as a leader that sometimes we forget, right? Like our team has fears, or we might have fears that we've got to manage. And today, I think it's a great segue into, all right, how do we start to enroll people and communicate this, our vision of success, to a team? So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, Mark, I got a question for you as a leader, having been a leader and, communicating to a team, what's been some of the biggest challenges that you've experienced or have come up against?
I keep coming back to this concept of clarity, the clarity in the message. I think I've told this story a few times. I used to sit in a sales meeting on Monday morning with about 10 people. Half were recruiters and half were salespeople. And I would often do an experiment and ask everyone to take notes. And then I gather the notes, half-hour sales meeting. I'm saying the same thing to everybody at the same time. And every single person would come back to me with a different set of notes. They'd take away different messaging than I intended oftentimes. Um, and I was amazed because I've always thought of myself as a fairly clear communicator. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that making the assumption that you've gotten your message across about what the vision is, because I think based on human nature, Jeff, in my experience anyway, you have to repeat the message. You have to find a way to bring that message up. I suppose it's like a vision or a mission statement for a company. You can't just say it and it sticks. You have to kind of caress it over time. Does that make sense?
100%. You've got to live it, sort of day in and day out. And I mean, I think one of the challenges is, especially as a leader, we give a lot of thought to what that vision of success looks like, right? And when we go to communicate it, we almost assume that people are tracking at the same sort of thought process that we've already sort of that energy we've already put into it. And so there is sort of an art of being able to communicate and articulate that vision at the same time, really understand the perspective and the perception of those that you're looking to lead.
Yeah, and I think you have to build processes and systems around it that reinforce the message. Like it's almost like you have guardrails where you can't go above 50% or below
Mhm.
30%, whatever it might be. And those processes and systems wouldn't confuse someone who had that vision because the vision and the systems and the processes are consistent with one another. Um, yeah, it's and just because you believe in it doesn't mean that they're going to believe in it. That's another kind of experience that I've had. So I think consistency and clarity make enrolling the right people much more probable, much more
Yeah,
likely.
for sure. Early on in my career, I can recall a very wise person sharing with me. There's almost this cycle of communicating and building your team, but it's kind of this cycle of tell, sell, tell.
Mm-hmm.
Early in a career, when someone's brand new to a position or role, you're just kind of telling them, here's how to do it, here's what needs to get done, here's what we expect.
Mhm.
And as people mature in a career and they've got different perspectives, then sometimes you go into selling them on what's in it for them if we actually pursue this vision of success, as a team or as an organization. Um, and so there's like this cycle, I think, to be aware of as we're communicating.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm doing now in some of the leadership training I'm doing is, and it keeps coming back. I didn't expect it to be so common, the theme, and it's part of the enrollment process, but it's this notion of developing a deep why. You know, if we're going in this direction, why are we going in this direction? Why aren't we going in that direction? Why? What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Kind of like dig 4 or 5 layers deep, because if you can get that deep on the why, it becomes much clearer for the other person. I wouldn't have even thought about that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with me. And the second part of that kind of tactic is the future if we do this, and the future if we don't do this. And that kind of takes the why and kind of wraps it in a nice bow. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, and the future might be 6 months, it might be a year, it might be 2 years. I don't know how far out you could go in this day and age with all the innovation and change. You probably have to modify sooner, but whatever that end date is for an end state, you know, if you clarify what it's going to look like if we don't do this, and if we do this, between those three kind of components of communication, I think it's difficult not to make a compelling case.
I agree with you. I think what I hear you talking about, and I'm a big believer in this, is just the transparency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just being transparent as a leader. And when you're looking to enroll people, approaching them the way they need to be approached,
Mm-hmm.
but sharing enough of that information that's going to help them really understand that why at a much deeper level. And I think being transparent these days is just critically important to helping others and just helping a team sort of achieve maybe more than they expected.
Yeah, transparency is refreshing. The other word that I love is authenticity. You know,
Yeah.
I really think that if you're transparent and authentic, it's much easier to enroll people. There's kind of like, it's almost being loyal. You know, we're all together in this endeavor, and yeah, I think transparency. The danger with transparency is I do still think there is a time to say things. There's a way to say things, and then there is to whom you say them. Like some
Yeah.
things are better said one on one, and some things are better said in a public forum. So I think I've had to pay attention to those things before in the past. I think they're, but I'm a big fan of transparency. I just think there's a bit of a caveat there, if that makes sense, Jeff.
Well, I think so. What you're reminding me as you say that is just sort of recognizing where everybody on your team is, maybe in their personal learning curve or their personal learning journey, right? Like some individuals are going to be more comfortable with the deep information. Others only need to know X or Y or Z to sort of come on board. And I think part of the art of being a great leader is recognizing where people are in that sort of self growth and journey themselves so that you're transparent and communicate to the degree that you need to.
Yeah. Yeah, there is such a thing as over communication. What do you think about the idea that this is not the enrollment of everybody is not a finite event, that it's an ongoing, never ending kind of trial and error?
Yeah, I 100% think it is I think about it, when you hire people and you build your team and you start to bring people into an organization, there's the vision that you have and there's the vision of the organization, but every single individual you're bringing on that team has a personal vision of success. And I think the art of ongoing communication and leadership is sort of melding those two, right? Like it's bringing together the best of the best in your vision with the best and the best of each individual on your team.
Hmm.
I think one of the challenges I see often is that a lot of leaders are flying blind, really to understanding each and every individual on the team. So I think it is an ongoing conversation to really extract what you need to extract to connect with people the way you need to connect with.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to your experience. I'm thinking of mine. You know, let's say you have a team of 10 people, and you brought them all on, and around the same time frame, and you're just going to initiate a sales challenge and support that sales challenge. And you're operating with, transparency, you're operating with authenticity, you're relationship driven, you're pushing concepts like trust and integrity and reciprocity. Not everybody wants to go along for that ride. And, what do you do when you're 6 months in and you got one person that's just squawking and just no matter what you do, you can't get them on track? How do you handle something like that? Because those kinds of things pop up a lot.
Yeah, they do, and I think I think up to that point, that 6 months, you would have been having conversations and you would have been tracking, you would have been coaching and mentoring and all the other things you do as a great leader. You would have been asking questions to understand maybe why or why not there's a whatever degree of buy-in. And then sometimes you need to make a change, right?
Yep.
Like I'm a big believer, we talked about it in the first episode of our series here of just understanding everybody's unique strengths. And the more you work and communicate with somebody, you really start to learn what those strengths are. And sometimes that person may not be best suited in the sales department.
Yep.
Maybe they're better suited in your customer service or ongoing account management department, or maybe somewhere else. But I think within an organization, different teams have different objectives that they need to achieve. And so part of sharing that vision, inviting people into or enrolling them into that vision is also making sure you've got the right people in the right seats.
Yeah, I don't think we spend enough time, and I don't need to put you in that basket, but I certainly don't. And what I've seen among the hundreds or thousands of clients that I've dealt with, big and small, is this idea of spending an inordinate amount of time on the hiring process, preparation for the hiring process, the job description writing process and communication process, the interviewing process, and that whole thing. I think it's because people don't like to go through that process. They don't like to look at
Yeah.
resumes. That it's a pain in the ass hiring people, as important as it is. But I think we have a tendency, as I've seen it, of bringing people into the process and squeaking them through because we don't want to talk to 5 more people or 10 more people. They got like 80% of what I need, and I make the mistake of bringing them into the group, and I seem to have to relearn that one over my
Yeah.
whole career. Have you had experience with that? You know what I'm
Oh,
talking about?
all the time. I mean, the hiring process takes a lot of energy. I mean, it takes a lot
Yeah.
of expense. It takes a
Mhm.
lot of just time. And, as a leader, you want to keep moving and you just want to surround yourself with good staff and people that have bought into sort of what you're trying to accomplish as a team. And
Mhm.
the pain that comes up when you've put all this effort and energy in and then somebody, just doesn't work out. I mean, none of us hire somebody hoping to see them fail,
Yep.
right? Like we hire people hoping that they'll do their best and perform for the team, but it's sometimes we do squeak people through just to avoid the process. And I think other times we make the mistake of trying to hire for perfection.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
the best scenario is when you can start to work together in some capacity and continue to evolve.
Yeah, I spent my whole career, like I went to work for a guy who did the opposite of what I did, and it was very successful. He looked to hire senior people, oftentimes senior people that could bring client relationships and in not in violation of a non-solicitation or non-competition agreement, and plug them right in to his company, and he paid them handsomely. He paid them back in the day like 80 or 100 grand in base salary, where I would go out and hire kids and pay them 25 grand and give them commission and tell them, if we both do our job together, we're going to be at 6 figures come the end of this year, beginning of next, or on track for it. And I just always found those people to be more loyal, fewer bad habits. But I guess my point is, if you don't put the right people in your system, whatever your system is, then enrolling them is virtually impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think, understanding who to enroll and how to enroll, I mean, it always seems to come back to the art of leading with questions,
Mm-hmm.
and asking. And I mean, obviously in interviews, we ask a lot of questions, but It's going those levels deeper that you talked about, the why, and the why is this important to you, and why is that important to you, and why is making six figures important to you? It's like really getting into the depth of what drives, motivates, and moves this person. I just remember early in my career, I was, being in the employment industry, we spent a lot of time and training and efforts in just developing ourselves as leaders of people. But
Mhm.
one of the quotes that somebody shared with me was the platinum rule. It's treat others the way they would like to be treated, as
Mhm.
compared to kind of the golden rule. It's not assuming that everybody wants to be treated the same way or communicated with the same way you do.
Mhm.
Sometimes you need to reach out and communicate with them the way they need to sort of be communicated with.
Yeah, I think kind of to wrap it up, I think maybe the message to leaders out there that are aspiring to enroll people around their initiatives or their projects or their vision is to spend a good bit more time on the concept of enrollment than it feels like you need to. I think it's one of those, it's like the hiring process, it's like the onboarding process, it's like if you do that half-ass, it's going to kick you in the ass. So if nothing else, just understand that the enrollment of your team is one of the most important things that you can do, and don't like hand out a piece of paper with a message on it and consider everybody enrolled. It's a lot more than that.
Yep. Well, and I think we can't discount what we talked about in the first two videos that we recorded, the one on developing that vision and the one on identifying your fears. That's really the preparation work that you
Mm-hmm.
need to do in order to go have these sort of conversations and start to enroll people. I mean, Mark, I'm sure it's been the same case for you, but I buy into things when I clearly understand them,
Yes.
right? And so if there's
Yes.
I'm saying the word wrong. I can't even say it. You got to say
I'll
it
give it
for
to
me.
you. I'll give it to you. Ambiguity. There you
There you
go.
go. Yeah, there's always a word that I seem to trip up on. But if you're unclear, then how can you expect anybody to follow you with any confidence, right?
Yeah.
So you've got
Yeah.
to do the preparatory work, and then you've got to get in there and start asking the questions to connect.
Yeah. It's what is it? Measure twice, cut once, right?
Right, right, right.
All
Yeah, in
right,
fact,
Jeff.
I was just going to say, I think a good exercise. So in that first video, we did the bullet points to represent vision. The second one was identifying the fears. I think the next step is to, for each one of those bullet points of success, start to identify a person or two that you can intentionally connect with to either ask questions or learn what you need to learn, and start the process of enrolling them.
Yeah. No, it's great. Great advice. Great advice. Well, we've come to the end of number 3. So we're not sure how many of these we're going to do, but
Yeah,
we're going to keep doing them as long as they remain fun and hopefully helpful and educational for whoever's listening.
yeah. Thanks, Mark. Pleasure
Thanks,
talking.
Jeff.